let's talk about the BR05 for a moment. I love the idea that Bell & Ross has had this fluidity where it can transport itself into any era that it would like to and create watches that are inspired by that era, right? So you started initially with a watch that was inspired by a cockpit clock. But then you started to create watches. I mean, for example, one of my favorite watches, like the Bentley Tanker, which I'm wearing, is inspired by the period of the 50s when the decommissioned planes came back and they would take out part of the fuselage and make it into, race cars with assault flats. And I love that. And so now I feel as if in the BR05, you transported yourself into one of my favorite eras, the 70s. The 70s is the era of the birth of the sports chic bracelet. And I think the question that you posed was, what if Bell & Ross had been alive then? And what would Bell & Ross's version of a sports chic bracelet watch look like? So this is the BR05, the original one, which was launched. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, you're right. Inspiration of 70s and being very modern, being in the contemporary world. I'm a lucky guy because my partner Bruno, he's such a talented designer. He has the culture of those 70s. He loves the 70s. And this integration of the bracelet was something that was missing in our collection. And there is another aspect also in the 05, off-road, on-road. To be in the countryside, to be in the city. We wear the watch for the heroes, inspired by all those very inspirational people with the pilots, divers, etc. But we were for off-road and for countryside. And now with the 05, we went into the city. The 05 makes that, you see it perfectly here. The integration of the bracelet is so clean, so neat to have a full metal bracelet on your waist with your watch. And for instance, one of the details that is that you see the talent of Bruno, the angle of the bracelet, the adaptation of the bracelet on the waist, the angle is 50 degrees. Why 50 degrees is so important? Because it makes that whatever the waist, whatever your dimension of the waist, the adaptation of this bracelet is perfect to fit any waist, whether even for women, men who have big waist, it goes perfectly. And I think that what was important in this challenge of the 05 was to be able to go from what is the DNA of the brand, which is the dashboard on the waist with the round dial, the square shape, and the 4 screws, but to make it this square, to make it soft, to make it smooth with this integration, and to make that, it fits the urban style. What you see in this photo is we have kept the DNA of what is Bell & Ross, but we transpose it into the city. It's the watch that makes that you feel good in the city as a urban explorer.
I love that. And also, as someone who grew up in New York, I love the idea of, what I love about New York City is it's constantly on the move. And when I think about clothing that I would like to, when I go to New York, I try to always dress in a kind of a tailored way, because you'll end up in a meeting, or you'll end up in a party, or you'll end up in an elegant dinner. But you also have to make some concessions to the fact that you're always moving, right? So if you're going to wear elegant shoes, usually I'll wear elegant shoes, but with like maybe a commando type sole on it, for example. And I like the sort of dynamic tension between elegance and also sports as well. And I think that that's, exactly what you've captured super well in the BR05. So let's take a look at the first of your novelties, the BR05 Skeleton Blue, which I know comes both in your beautiful integrated bracelet, but also in a very cool blue rubber strap. Maybe we'll start with the bracelet version first.
Yes. Okay. Last year on the whole collection of 05, the 05 has been an incredible success for us because it was another client who appreciates the urban style, and the whole collection was very. It was a new client. It has also consolidated our existing base. But one of the really watches that stands out in the collection was the skeleton one. The skeleton that we have introduced, it was the momentum that we introduced, the month it was put in the market, it was sold out immediately. And so, because it was a limited edition to 500 pieces. And then there was the Only Watch project, which is always a very inspirational project. It was very beautiful, and it was a beautiful charity with Luc Patavino. And what we have done with the blue skeleton with gold was a big success. And then we according to our clients, they said, yeah, but it was too short, the skeleton. We did more. And we said, yeah, but we cannot reproduce the same. So we made a mix between this blue skeleton on a steel one. And here comes this new introduction of the 05 Skeleton Blue. It's through the glass that we had this intense blue, which gives a style that is for instance, one of the very iconic of the 05 was the blue dial, and through the mix of this color, the blue plus the skeleton that was one of the hottest in the collection, we are introducing, in fact, the perfect mix. Of course, it is a limited edition to 500 pieces. And we see that here the integration of the bracelet is, as we said, it's a perfect integration, and this is the interest of the 05 collection.
So the blue is actually not being applied to the material of the plates, but actually it's by virtue of having a blue sapphire dial. So as you know, your eye looks at it, it's also interesting because it gives this real sense of like profondeur, depth, and dimension to it, and that's the result of having the blue sapphire as well. That's giving the color to the entire watch, and that's counterpointed by having on the sapphire, the blue sapphire, the mounting of applied indexes with superluminova that are super clean and white. And I somehow like this juxtaposition. It's very energetic and very stylish. Let's look at it on a blue rubber strap as well, right?
Yes. I think even if this watch, the 05, has been thought to have a perfect integration with the bracelet, I think it's very important to have options and to have adaptability. And one of the options that we wanted since day one for 05 was to be able to have a rubber strap that fits, for instance, in this case, perfectly the color of the blue rubber strap fits perfectly the blue skeleton dial.
I like this also because when I see it in this, especially when I look at it in this version or in the skeleton version, but especially this blue sapphire version, it really becomes, it's completely its own watch. You know, I mean, of course, there were people who had mentioned, oh, but maybe it's a bit inspired by, you know, a Royal Oak or a Nautilus. But when you see it like this, you realize it's actually an incredibly modern watch that happens to have an integrated bracelet, but really comes from, you know, the BR03 instrument kind of look, right?
No, you're right. I think that in that sense, Bruno doesn't compromise. We have kept the DNA of what is the brand with the round in a square case with the 4 screws, what was inspired by the dashboard. But instead of being off-road, we go on-road. And I think that in fact, without having the logo, you recognize it's Bell & Ross because it has this identity. Of course, the inspirational is from, as you mentioned, the 70s, but I think at the same time, it's very modern. It's really a watch that is inspired by the 70s, by this integration, by this momentum, but which is totally modern and totally Bell & Ross. And this is something that is the most important. And also, as you have mentioned, the readability is an important aspect of the brand. Since day one, when we established the brand, readability was the most important. And for instance, the superluminova that we're using here in the 05 collection is something that goes in all the collections of Bell & Ross because it's a way to stand out during the night.
Let me ask you a question. Oh, that's a great picture.
Yeah.
That's a genuinely
the intensity of the blue. The intensity of the blue that really makes and here it's just an image, but when you see it in real, you have some reflex that are really giving you the emotion. Because when you think about it, the beauty of the watch business and why even this in challenging time, I think there is a lot of beauty in the time industry, in the time in those watches, because it's not only a way to capture time, because it's also a way to give you emotion with the object, and when you feel it on your wrist, you have this emotion.
Fantastic. And I love how like the movement architecture shows you the mainspring inside of its barrel there, so you can also see what state of wind your mainspring is in, whether you need to wind it. And then on top of there is the balance wheel, just on top of the ampersand of Bell & Ross, which is the kind of beating and oscillating heart of the watch. So that's very cool. Carlos, I wanted to talk to you a little bit also about the idea, because I feel as if your watches are always a very strong value proposition as well. And I know that for you, it's always been important that in some ways you kind of over-deliver in terms of the watch relative to its price. You know, when I look at a lot of your watches, I imagine, oh, okay, it's going to be this price. But what I like about the Bell & Ross effect is when you check the price, you're always like a bit pleasantly surprised that it's a more affordable. Why is it important for you to give value to the consumer today?
Well, as you know, the origin of Bell & Ross we have been using for the armies, for the elite groups, etc. And I think that since day one, we were used to give a good proposition in terms of value. Whether we make, let's say, a medium range price or very high price, because we have been also able to do high complication going to $500,000, we always want to give good value. And I think this is one of the reasons why we have been able to perform since day one and to progress. It's because we're giving good value, where also another aspect of the brand is the center of our logo, the ampersand. What does it represent? Well, the ampersand represents unit of competence. We take the best competence, wherever it is. When we established the brand, it was this ampersand was the symbol of the union of competence between designer, between engineer, between watch manufacturer and professional users. And when you use good competence and when you mix them with a good project, then you arrive to something that creates good value, because you take the best of each of them and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So one of the reasons why we have been able to give good value is probably this philosophy of union competence.
Very nice. So Carlos, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for sharing the BR05 Skeleton Blue. I have to say, especially when I look at it closer, it's such a fun and cool watch at a great price, and it has an amazing presence on the wrist. It is actually, the more I look at it, a wholly modern watch, which is really kind of a response to the urban environment, and for someone that wants to be mobile and sporty but chic also. So the perfect watch for places like New York or Tokyo or Singapore or London. So I'm really digging it. And it's 500 pieces of a limited edition, so I'm sure we'll go fast. Thank you.
You got it. You got it.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Great seeing you.